beautiful city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTVC. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue. Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church, and your host for this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. Today we're privileged to have a person with us who provides leadership and therapeutic ministry in Austin called Samaritan Counseling. She is the Associate Director and a counselor on the staff of the Samaritan Counseling Centers of the Capital Region. Susie Steggy brings a doctorate in counseling to her practice through the center. And Susie, we are delighted to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'd like to, first of all, just have you tell us a little bit about how you happened to come to the counseling centers and to Austin.
We were living in Ohio, and we were ready to return to Texas, and made the choice to come to Austin because it was by far the best city in Texas. And I worked for a time for the Austin Independent School District, and then had the opportunity to leave there, and I did with some difficulty, but with great pleasure, the opportunity to join the staff of the Samaritan Counseling Center. Mm-hmm. I did that in 1988, August.
I see. Not too long ago then.
No, almost 2 years.
When you were in Ohio, you were doing your graduate work there at
Ohio State.
Ohio State, and had this advanced degree in counseling.
Right.
And then brought it here to practice. Mm-hmm. And since you've come, and you said that you worked initially for the school district.
Right.
And have been with this, what is a private nonprofit agency. Mm-hmm. And why don't you share with our viewers something of what Samaritan Counseling Centers are and what their purpose is and how they work.
We're as you said, a non-profit counseling center. We see individuals, families, for a wide variety of issues that they bring into us. Our main offices are located downtown at Central Presbyterian Church, and then we have satellite offices. Right now our satellites are in Oak Hill at Shepherd of the Hills Presbyterian Church, one in Round Rock at Round Rock Presbyterian Church, a third one in Northwest Hills at First Presbyterian Church, and soon, early summer, I imagine, we'll open an office at Westlake United Methodist Church, so we'll have a Methodist church in among the Presbyterian churches.
Yes, when you first name all those places, it sounds like it's a Presbyterian organization.
Well, it does, and actually it's an ecumenical organization. The Presbyterian Church, Central Presbyterian Church, which at that time was called First Southern, offered hospitality to a counseling center. They wanted to minister to the downtown area, and one of the ways they chose to do that was by opening a counseling center. And at that time, 1984, it was called Central Cities Counseling Center, and did basically the same sorts of things that we continue to do, but not under the aegis of a national network, the Samaritan Institute.
Okay, I think that's would be of interest too, from the standpoint that you're not just a local operation without being in touch with a larger one. And this national group is headquartered where?
In Denver, Colorado. Yeah.
And has how many outlets? Or?
There are about 70 counseling centers across the nation, and they're all affiliated and accredited by the Samaritan Institute. Mm-hmm. And there's a fairly lengthy accreditation process that goes into being accepted as part of the Samaritan network. And the goal of the Samaritan Institute and of that network is to provide some continuity of service across the country, so that if people leave Austin and go to another city where there's a Samaritan Counseling Center, we have a lot of confidence in referring them to that center because we know the basis on which they're accredited and continue to be evaluated.
So it sets a standard and maintains a quality of service that wouldn't be maybe possible without some overall coordinating group.
And that makes a big difference for us as we give referrals, because it's easy to look in the yellow pages and find some names to offer to people, but difficult to know the nature of the services that people will receive. And one of our interests is in seeing that people get good referrals, obviously. And so if it's to a Samaritan Center, we feel some real confidence.
Okay. Well, now, one of the things that I know that they have done as a national body, the Samaritan Center, is provided a public service announcement in the form of a film, and we have that with us here. And have folks take a look at that and
Okay.
see a little bit about the purpose in that format.
Remember how good it felt to talk to your best friend when you were growing up? Sharing your problems and feelings with someone who cared often helped you through difficult times. Samaritan Counseling Centers help people deal with the stresses of daily life. They focus on a quality of life that combines physical, emotional, and spiritual wellness. As interfaith counseling centers, they offer a unique service to their communities. Maybe it's time you had a good talk with someone who cares.
So, does that seem to catch the flavor of what you do day by day?
It does, with one exception. Not everyone who comes to us is a member of a traditional intact family as the one on the tape appeared to be.
Right.
We see people from all configurations of family life, and people who are living alone, who are dealing with some of the difficulties that come from that. So that's the only difference that I would see between what we actually do and what that depicts.
You don't bill yourself as a family counseling center.
We do family counseling, but no, we don't bill ourselves as a
Not
family counseling
exclusively
center.
to
That's
that.
right.
Okay.
More of our work is done with individuals or with couples, married couples, but by far most of our work is with individuals.
Okay. Let's say I'm coming into your office, and I'm going to role play with you just a little bit here.
Okay.
See how this works. I'm anxious, and I'm confused, and I've hesitated to come because my understanding of what counseling is that it's like you go to a shrink. Mm-hmm. And are you a shrink?
I don't think of myself as a shrink, though certainly people who come in may have that perception. A lot of the adolescents that I see have balked at the idea of going to a shrink,
Mm-hmm.
and that tickles me. I don't perceive myself as one.
I see. Well, now, if I'm talking to you about my problems, and I'm hesitant, too, because I think that this is in a church. Every time I look for a Samaritan, or have learned about a Samaritan Center, it's in some church. And are you going to preach at me?
No, we won't even come close to preaching at you. If you choose to have your spirituality a part of the counseling process, then it's there. All of the people on staff are real comfortable with our faith and have some real clear beliefs about God and religion and spirituality, but my beliefs don't come over to you unless that becomes a part of the process and you're interested in knowing what I believe about a particular thing. But we are not there to make you believe any particular thing or to introduce spirituality if you choose not to have it there.
You know what else I'm afraid of?
What?
Money. I mean, I don't have a lot of money, and I need help, and I understand that to get psychotherapy or whatever you call it's expensive, and I'm afraid I'm going to go broke if I come to you.
Well, when you make your initial phone call to us, you talk with our very able administrative assistant, and she'll talk to you about the financial end of it, because that's a very important part of it. That's one of several things that keeps people from calling initially, no matter how anxious and confused they may be feeling. One of the things that keeps them from dialing the phone is the money aspect. We operate on a sliding fee scale that right now slides from $35 an hour to $70 an hour, and that's substantially below the going rate for many mental health professionals in Austin. In addition to that, we have a fund, the Good Samaritan Assistance Fund, which is provided to us by supporters in the community who offer donations to us. And that fund enables us to see people for a lower fee. And we do the best that we can do to be sure that people who want to come in for counseling can come in. That doesn't mean that everyone who calls can come in for a very, very low fee, but it means that we do everything we possibly can to make the fee affordable.
Okay, so I don't have to worry about going broke if I come
No.
to see you. All right, and I don't have to be concerned that because this is in a church setting that you're going to try to evangelize me and make me into a Presbyterian or
That's true.
some other doctrinaire group. You're also have assured me that I'm not like talking to a shrink, that I'm talking to another person who has maybe some training in talking to people and helping people discuss their feelings and probe what's going on in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go back to that just for one more minute, because I'm afraid what you're going to do with me if I really open up to you and tell you what I'm thinking and feeling and afraid of and hoping for, or any of that stuff, is that you're going to try to reconstruct my personality and make me over.
Start from scratch, huh, and build a new Rich.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, and maybe I kind of like myself, and I don't want to be another person, and I just want some help in working through some problems. Am I in the wrong place?
No. We don't do total reconstruction work.
Not radical surgery.
Not radical surgery. What we do is take people where they are. So when you come in and tell me that you're confused and you're anxious and there's some things you want to talk about, that's where we start. We don't start with my agenda, we start with yours. And we start with the assumption that there's health in you that enabled you to make a decision to ask for help, because asking for help is one of the most difficult things we can do, and it takes strength to do that. So we assume some health in you because you've walked in the door and sat down and chosen to bring your difficulty in.
Do I have to worry about thinking or worrying that I'm crazy to come in and talk to you?
No, but that's a common idea that people have, and again, very often adolescents whose parents request that they come in and see someone are afraid that it's because they're crazy. And a lot of adults have the same idea. I think we still cling to some vestige of an idea that if we ask for help, particularly mental health help, that there's something wrong with us. And that's not the case at all. We all run into issues that we have difficulty dealing with and that we need some objective guidance about.
Well, now you keep talking about adolescence, and here I am in my mid-50s. Should I feel embarrassed about coming for help when I'm this old and should have things all figured out?
No. A lot of people have a yardstick against which they measure where they should be at a particular point, and people are real hard on themselves sometimes, and they say things like, well, I'm 45 and I should have this, or I should have figured this out a long time ago. And it turns out there's no yardstick. We each reach different points at different times in our lives, and every stage of life brings some new adjustment we have to deal with. And so 50's not a lot different from 15, probably in a number of ways.
Well, I wouldn't want to use the word midlife crisis exactly, but let's say I'm wondering about that. I'm just, you know, think that I should have my life all settled and everything figured out, but I'm finding that for the first time in my life, I've had to ask for help. And I'm just wondering if that may be like having anything to do with God. And that if I've been reluctant to even come into a church, you can tell that I'm hesitant about, you know, having something laid on me. But I've had some thoughts about spirituality as distinct from doctrinaire religion, and so I could talk to you about that.
Sure, that would be a very important thing for us to be able to talk about.
Tell me about, how can God solve my problems? You know, you hear, you turn on the TV and these televangelists or on the radio, or they say just only believe, and that if you've got a psychological hang-up, it'll go away. How about it?
I haven't seen it work that way. I think God is there through the whole process. I mean, God's in my office and God's around me in my life, and He's around you in yours, or she is with us. But I think that it requires active participation and effort on our parts to sort through some of the issues that we run into. They're human dilemmas. And the human dilemma of spirituality, of our relationship to God, is one that we have to wrestle with off and on through our lives. I had a lot of answers at 15 that I lost at 19, gained again at 25, lost again in my 30s, and am finding again now. And so my spiritual journey is not widely different from my psychological journey. Just when I think I have things all put together, something comes unfurled, and I have to sort again, and I have to figure things out. And some of those sortings out are really difficult.
Now you're talking about yourself. I mean, you're, and I'm going to leave my role as a client and return to the pastoral role just for a minute, because I'm interested in that. You're saying that you're just an unfolding person, Susie Steggy.
Right.
You describing yourself as a person as distinct from a professional. Do you really, when people come in and talk to you about their problems, do you tell them about yourself like that?
Generally not, because my role when people are in my office is to help them sort through their issues. Things that I'm working on myself belong other places. They belong in supervisory relationships with the people that I work with. They belong in my own writing and in my own mind. Certainly there are times when I share parts of myself with people, but it's part of my profession to know when that's appropriate and to do it only when it's helpful to them, not when it meets some need of my own. Right. Which is an interesting line to walk.
And to that extent, your work and mine, when I do pastoral counseling, you know, the #1 rule is to keep yourself out of it in regard to not getting in the way of people being able to express themselves and be forthcoming and not afraid that you're going to jump in and try to predetermine the outcome. You let it flow. But you also, I sense, maybe insofar as you might make reference to your own experience, it's not simply a passive. It's not like Carl Rogers, I know, is the famous therapist who talked about non-directive counseling, reflecting people's feelings. You're not stuck just in that pattern as you work with folks.
No, not at all. And in fact, when people come into my office, they see pictures of my family, pictures of my children on my desk. They see the way I've chosen to organize the office and the colors that are in there. And so they see things of me automatically, just the way I dress, the way I greet them in the outer office. So as I perceive it, I'm a part of that process. It's a person-to-person process. It's not me as sort of a blank filling a spot and the client talking to that blank spot. I mean, I'm very much a person in that process, and that's part of the healing. The relationship is a large part of the healing that goes on at the center.
Okay, well, I see you as a very warm, caring person, and person I would like to talk to. What would give me confidence that you would be more than a friend, though? What is it that you bring to the relationship in that office that would be other than, just like if I were to seek out someone in my acquaintanceship in work or in the neighborhood or whatever, that could be a good listener?
The nature of the therapeutic relationship has some things built into it that make it different from a friendship, as you described. One of the things is that it's structured around confidentiality. You're certain when you come to see me that nothing we talk about will leave that office. Except in an extreme situation where there's an emergency, where your safety or someone else is involved. And even then, I would say to you, Rich, this is something that can't stay here. This is something we need to do something about. But outside of those situations, which are rare, you have the assurance of absolute confidentiality with me. You don't have any concern about seeing me at church or seeing me in the grocery store and wondering who I've told, wondering how I might respond to you. I'm there to hear whatever you have to say and help you look at that without a judgmental quality to it. You don't lose your relationship with me because of anything that you say.
All right, and also I can presume that you've had certain training.
That's right.
That will take me through some depths and some phases that I might not get just in a conversation with a friend.
That's true, and you can also assume that as it becomes appropriate, as our relationship grows and as I know you and your limitations and your strengths, that I will push you perhaps harder on some issues than a friend might. There are things that I might ask you that a friend wouldn't be willing to ask you, and enable you to talk about some things that you might not be able to.
All right. Well, let me talk about the issue of you know, just do we go beyond this? Do you have groups? Do you have other resources that after maybe we made an initial contact that you might refer me to?
There are all sorts of resources that we're hooked up to in the community, and we do a lot of referrals to places like Child and Family Service for their credit counseling, and for some of their groups, they have some excellent groups for adult survivors of incest, for example. We do a lot of referral to things like that. We also do a lot of referral to 12-step programs, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Adult Children of Alcoholics, Debtors Anonymous, all of the self-help groups,
you
the
can tell
12-step
people
groups.
where to go in that regard.
We have the phone numbers, and we encourage people to participate in those if it's appropriate. So we have that kind of ability to make referrals. We also run groups ourselves, and it's not uncommon for people who've been in individual counseling to choose to go into a group at some point and sort of continue their growth, but with a supportive group of people around them, not just individually. So we offer that. We also offer weekend seminars of various sorts that are open not only to our clients but to anyone who wants to come. Redecision workshops where people look at messages that they got as children and decide if those messages still have value in their lives, or if they need to redecide as adults that they can choose to do something different. We do a variety of things like that in addition to the individual counseling.
And what about out in the community? You mentioned you had experience with the schools. Are you still in the schools in some way?
Yeah, we are, and we're really excited about that. We started a little over a year ago, during the school year before last, doing some free hours for Crockett High School students. And we decided at the beginning of this year that we would like to go into Crockett High School at their invitation and do some counseling there. It's often really hard for adolescents to get to our office. It's difficult in all sorts of ways to make that connection if they're the ones who have to do the traveling. So we did a pilot program in the spring where we did a group and did individual work at Crockett on Tuesday mornings, and we're real pleased with the relationships we were able to establish with students. So we now have, thanks to Shoal Creek Hospital, their community services fund, we now have a grant where we can continue that work next year in the schools, and we're real excited about that, sort of an in-school therapy program.
So this is an outreach that
It
goes
is an
beyond
outreach.
these centers that you've named around the metropolitan area. And you have access to professional people, of psychiatrists and physicians and other people like that on your staff?
We have a medical consultant, Dr. Beth Miller, who meets with us at least once a month, and we're able to ask questions of her that relate to medicine. She's also well-versed in psychology and psychiatry, and so she's an excellent resource. And then we also do biweekly supervision with a psychiatrist who's our psychiatric consultant, Glenn Roark. And again, we get all sorts of help and backup and supervision from him.
If you find people that need medicine, you've got people that you can refer them to?
We do. We don't necessarily refer to our consultants. We give people a range of choices, but we have relationships with internal medicine people and with psychiatrists, and have a good referral list, people we feel comfortable with and know. So if people need medication, particularly psychoactive medication, we can refer them for it.
In the short time that we have left, I'd like to do a couple of things. One is to run that number by again for people that may not have seen it earlier in the show, that gives some access to. Anyone that would like to learn more about this can call at the center administrative office, and then may find that there's a locality close by that has that, or can come downtown. I'd also like to pick up on, you know, just in terms of the spirituality. Jesus talked about, I will send you a counselor, describing the Holy Spirit in that regard. And it's occurred to me that that is not simply a Christian understanding of the way God relates to people, but that the counseling role, what you do as a living, is got a kind of reflection in our relationship to God. That God's a good listener. God can probe us, and Does any of this make sense to you from the standpoint of your practice? How would you comment on that? I'm sending you a counselor idea.
Well, I think one of the things about the staff at the Samaritan Counseling Center is that each of us, perhaps in a different way, feels a call to do what we do. It is a job, but it's not just a job. It's a calling. It's a way of ministering. It's a way of reaching out to people who are in stress and offering them assistance. And I see it as a calling. And I think your analogy is a good one.
You could be working in any number of other settings. This was not something that you had to do. You had your choice.
That's right.
You did a redecisioning to come to
That's true.
The Samaritan Center. And we'd also like to say that in making the decision to join us today, you have been a blessing to those of us who have had a chance to hear you.
Thank you.
And I would like to affirm that calling that you responded to.
I appreciate it. I've enjoyed being here.
We've enjoyed having you be with us today and would invite you to be with us again next week on Austin Faith Dialogue. And in behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, I'm Richard Thompson. Peace be with you. Information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.